Hey guys, Brian here, Bright Guy Garage, and today we're looking at a pretty common issue, which is an ABS or wheel speed sensor broken off clean in the hub. You might run into this issue when you go to replace a bad sensor. As you can see here, they're pretty much completely plastic, as far as the housing goes at least. And maybe you'll go to take it out, you take the bolt out, you go to wiggle it, you notice it really doesn't move. So you get a flathead or something to try and get under there and pull it out, and then it'll break off clean and flush right here, and you'll be left with the rest of this sensor stuck inside the hub. This is a pretty dirty area on a car between the brake dust and grease and all kinds of stuff. Water splashing up onto the hub, so it makes sense why these get seized so often. But I'm here to just mention a quick alternative way that I use to get my stuck one out, and it didn't involve drilling. So if you look this up, you'll commonly find that it's recommended that people just say to drill them out. And there's some videos of people drilling them out, and you can totally do that. This is plastic, so it's really not that much of an issue to drill through. I've noticed that some people actually are doing it on the car, which I definitely don't recommend, because when you go to drill it on the car, you're going to be coming from the outside in. And as you're drilling through the sensor that's stuck in that bore on the hub, all that debris and everything is going to be falling right in here where your wheel bearing is. And you never want to introduce anything like that to your wheel bearing, especially area like this with grease and everything. It's all just going to get stuck in there. Even if you try and follow that up with compressed air, you're not going to manage to get everything in here out of the one and only hole that you're trying to blow it out of. So I recommend taking the spindle off the car. It might seem a bit daunting, but it's really not that bad. It's just upper ball joint, lower ball joint nuts, tie rod end, 2 bolts for your caliper assembly, pull the rotor off, take the axle nut off, and you can pull this out. So I'll show you what I did. As you can see, this is my new one here, and it fits perfectly fine in the bore. So what I did is just use the punch and drove it out. Yeah, that's simple. I grabbed the punch from my set here that the diameter seemed a little smaller than the end of the wheel speed sensor. And you can see on the end of this wheel speed sensor here that it's kind of rectangular, and this is what sits kind of inside the hub. That broke off immediately the second I tapped on it. And then what I was left with was really just the section of sensor that was left stuck inside the bore, which is the hole that passes through the hub that the sensor sits in. So at that point, I grabbed the punch and I was able to line it up with the end of the sensor and give it a few good whacks with the slump hammer here. And I noticed that I was able to get it to move just a little bit. So at that point, I knew it was no longer frozen. I just want to show you something here with the punch quick. In most cases, punches here are tapered like this, and this is a pretty tight area. You're not really going to get a clean shot at the bore here. So as you set the punch up, you can see flush with the very end there, you have a little bit of room that you can work with. That's all I needed just to get it free, just to hit it down like that. And the angle is kind of rough, so you want to be careful that once you bottom this punch out and it gets bound up because of that angle on the taper, you want to stop. If you keep hitting this, you're going to damage the bore, and you're really not going to be driving the punch anywhere except getting it stuck. So at that point, I took the punch out and I just switched to a long, thin flathead. And as you can see here, the flathead's long and thin enough that I have quite a bit of room to play to approach the hole down there. And that was enough to just give it a few taps and drive the rest of the sensor out. And at that point, this is pretty much all I was left with that came out. The rest of it is kind of broken up all over the workbench here. But that was it. No drilling, no making a mess, no introducing debris into the wheel bearing area or anything like that. Another issue with drilling is if you really don't start with that first drill bit that you use dead center of that sensor, you're going to keep increasing the size of the drill bit to drill it through, and then you might be a little off center, and you end up taking the drill bit into the side of the bore. You might end up enlarging the bore, and then it really doesn't sit in there tight anymore, which I guess really isn't a huge deal for a wheel speed sensor. But this was, in my opinion, a lot easier, a lot cleaner, and it took a handful of taps with a hammer and a punch and a screwdriver, and it was out. So now I'm prepared. I'm just gonna clean all this back up, throw it back in the car. I'll get this new one in, which fits in there perfectly, as you guys saw, and that's it, all done. So I hope this helps. Save you from doing a little bit of drilling or wasting any other time, or perhaps ruining a wheel bearing. So, all right, guys, have a good one.